This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Anyone who steps into a role of family caregiving, be vulnerable, be open, be curious. Don't feel like you should know the answers. Don't use the word should in any part of your vocabulary. Ask, reach out, say, I don't know. And you can even Google, I don't know what to do about XYZ. And Google brings back answers. Google the diagnosis and look for support groups for the diagnosis. And just start someplace.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. I'm talking with Sue Ryan today, the founder and inspirationalist of Sue Ryan Solutions. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. Today's guest is the caregiver's caregiver. She's been through it. She's had multiple caregiving experiences, and she knows what it's like. She knows a few things because she's seen a few things when it comes to caregiving. Sue Ryan, my guest, is the founder of Sue Ryan Solutions. She works to guide non-professional caregivers to become confident, balanced, and supported in all phases of their caregiving journey. She's been in roles of family caregiving support for more than 40 years and actually is currently in a caregiving role with her husband who's on hospice. Sue says she has moved from feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, and even frightened as a caregiver to feeling confident, balanced, and supported, helping herself navigate these transitions in her life. As a speaker, coach, author, educator, and mentor, she shares the lessons and strategies she's learned to help other people positively navigate their own caregiving journeys. She's got a lot of experience as a caregiver, 40 years. And Sue shares that with me. We talked sort of about how she got started, and we're talking about where she is now. She's got an interesting experience to share that she's currently walking as her husband's caregiver. He was diagnosed with end-stage Alzheimer's. So she's got a lot of wisdom to share, a lot of perspective that's firsthand, a lot of very valuable information to share. So here's my conversation with Sue Ryan of Sue Ryan Solutions. Sue Ryan, it is so nice to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Helen. I am grateful for the opportunity to be here.
It's great to connect. And sometimes I wish we captured the video because it's great to see somebody's smiling face on the screen in front of me.
Thank you very much. For the most of my life, I am smiling.
That's awesome. I've already introduced you, so our listeners know about the work that you're doing and your personal story as well. Tell me about your personal caregiving journey because it is a doozy.
You can say that, yes. I've been a non-professional caregiver for 40 years now. My first journey began before the internet, giving you a perspective of how old I am. And I learned early on what it felt like to be frustrated, overwhelmed, frightened. Nobody would talk about what was going on. We didn't have any way to get the information, and the experiences were really awful. I've said that the beginning of my caregiving journey was like being on an emotional roller coaster, often blindfolded. And what that did, though, is it framed, as I learned and more information became available, it framed not only how I live my journeys, it frames how I share my journeys. And when I was helping my first care receiver, she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And all of us were trying to figure out how to help her. And something might work one day and then it wouldn't work the next day. And things that you would try to do, I'll give you a very quick story on one of the first things that created the foundation for why I said it was an emotional roller coaster. She got up one night to go to the bathroom. She thought it was Thanksgiving. She went into the kitchen to preheat the oven after going to the bathroom. And generationally, people in her generation kept their bread and chips in the oven. Her husband woke up to the smell of melting plastic. That was one of our first caregiving journeys. And I embraced that journey, and then I had other people come into my life. And so I have almost continuously been a non-professional or family caregiver for the past 40 years in parallel with having my professional life and my full-time working career, that through many of the years of my career, I couldn't tell anyone I was in roles of caregiving because I wouldn't be given the opportunities, or I would be seen as not being able to get the job done if I needed to take time off. And now all of those experiences have helped me have much better experiences in my current journeys.
That's interesting. I think that's a good point to highlight. You kept your caregiving responsibilities and roles to yourself instead of sharing them professionally.
Yes.
Because it would put a spin, creates a perspective that you have too much going on personally, you wouldn't be available. Yeah.
And that's something that many people today are still facing. There are many people who don't self-identify as a caregiver, especially not at work, because the concern of how they would be seen or not given opportunities or being let go when they're having cutbacks, things like that. There's a lot of fear still. And that adds such an additional and hopefully unneeded burden for family caregivers, which is why that's become one of my focuses, part of my mission.
Absolutely. There are 55 million unpaid family caregivers across the United States. And I think it's something like 76% of those caregivers, and don't quote me on this statistic, work outside the home.
And those numbers are conservative.
Yes.
So many caregivers are not self-identified. Those numbers are conservative and they're exponentially increasing.
Yes, absolutely. With the expectation that that's going to continue as a trend. So through the years, as you've moved through all these different caregiving journeys, each one had its own particular flavor, had its own particular circumstances. What did you find most challenging for you as a caregiver?
When I think about the different roles that I had, and I really, really appreciate this question, because the part about it being challenging, every journey that each of us take is going to be challenging in different ways. And I learned, for me, the things that challenged me the most were when I didn't have access to information to guide me. When I felt alone, when I felt like I had no idea what to do, I didn't know where to turn to, I didn't know who could help me. And I think that was probably the most frustrating thing that happened. Day in and day out, frustrations are still going to happen. When I have access to resources that can help guide me through those, I can then manage them better. The number one thing I would say that has been the most frustrating is when I just didn't know what to do. The other thing that has been very, very frustrating is navigating the financial and the legal systems that surround care receiving and caregiving. There are support options that are available that, in order to take advantage of, you'd practically have to be an attorney yourself.
Yes.
And when you're trying to contact organizations, it can take hours and days to get through to them, to get the information, to get everything done, and only to find out that some of the pieces weren't done correctly, or they're missing one thing and they reject everything. I would say that those are the things that have been most frustrating for me.
It makes sense. When you talk about the lack of information and the lack of connection as a caregiver, especially in those early days when, our means of connecting via the internet and social media and FaceTime and texting was not there as an option, that kind of isolation and caregiving very much affects the health of the caregiver.
It does. That's why a lot of the times I felt overwhelmed. It's shifted now. We are so blessed with the internet and with so many more people having access to information. One of the frustrations when I talk with people now is they don't know the questions to ask.
Yeah.
And I respect that, because especially for most of us who are family caregivers, we didn't go to school for this. We didn't sign up for it. We didn't have 101 and go, oh, now we're ready. Okay. And so when we get started on the journey, and I talk about this being this big overarching umbrella about caregiving, and the diagnosis comes and you want the PhD in the diagnosis, and you've got this huge, overwhelming collection of things that all go under caregiving, it's hard to know where to start, what questions to ask, and what's most important. And it changes by diagnosis. There's not just one simple checklist you can use. And so especially getting started in the journey can still be very frustrating and very challenging.
I agree. I think it's a case of we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly. We don't know what we don't know. The thing that I would say is the most valuable that we can do in order to solve that is anyone who steps into a role of family caregiving, be vulnerable, be open, be curious. Don't feel like you should know the answers. Don't use the word should in any part of your vocabulary. Ask, reach out, say, I don't know. And you can even Google, I don't know what to do about XYZ. And Google brings back answers. Google the diagnosis and look for support groups for the diagnosis, and just start someplace. People like you and like me who've been on these journeys, we are so passionate about helping people. We will lean out. We understand what it is like in the very beginning and throughout the journey. Help is all around. One of the things that I am so passionate about because of the challenges in the beginning of my first journeys, I don't want anyone to ever feel alone.
That's a wonderful way that you've created meaning from what you've done as a caregiver. So let's talk about that. In all these caregiving roles that you've had and the current one that you have now with your husband, we're going to talk more about that in a minute. What has held the most meaning for you? What's been the most meaningful?
When I think about, for me, what has been most meaningful, it's really three things. The first thing is the fact that in every journey I have been on, I have been able to experience pure, unfiltered love. Any diagnosis takes a lot of filters away from people. I have done a lot of things on the journey that perhaps were not textbook, but my heart was always in the right place. I've always tried to do my very best. I've been around my care receivers in those moments where they're not saying what they think they should say. They're being completely vulnerable. And when I say it's pure love, it could be agony that they're expressing and they feel like they can express it because they can trust, or that they have the capacity to look at you and smile and you know it's coming from their heart. That's one of the things that has been most meaningful. The other part of it is that I have stepped into realizing there is a purpose in my life, the mission in my life for these journeys to have continued to be coming back into my life over and over and over again. And I don't want anybody to waste time on emotions that don't serve them. I don't want anyone to feel alone. I don't want them to feel out of control. And I want them to be able to see the potential and possibilities of their journey. And if I hadn't had the journey that I have had, I wouldn't have had all of that revealed to me. And while I'm much more knowledgeable about things to do in the journey now, what I am most passionate about is helping others along the way on their journeys while I continue to learn and see everything is happening for me, not to me.
I love it. So let's dive a little bit deeper into your personal story.
Sure.
And allow me the privilege of having this conversation with you. So your husband,
My husband, Jack.
your
Yep.
husband Jack, is currently on hospice care, correct?
He is. We're in the 11th year of our journey of love with his diagnosis of dementia, a type of dementia. It's Alzheimer's disease.
So can I ask, how long has Jack been on hospice care?
He's been on hospice care for 2 years now.
For 2 years, which is in hospice terms a long time because we talk about that 6-month prognosis. However, dementia is a diagnosis that has a much longer disease trajectory, and it is not uncommon for hospice patients with dementia to be on hospice care for much longer than other diagnoses. It's very common. So as a dementia caregiver, I think that there are special aspects of the diagnosis that provide more of a challenge. I think they're more isolating based on the patient's behaviors and the physical needs that they have. And so I think that dementia caregiving is very unique. I think those who engage in caregiving for people with Alzheimer's and different types of dementias have a unique set of challenges in front of them. So as Jack's caregiver, how has your experience as a caregiver for him with Alzheimer's dementia been different from some of the other caregiving experiences that you've had through the years?
Every caregiving journey is a personal relationship between the person who you know and the journey that they're on, and the diagnosis they have, and the life you're living with all of the other roles in your life. And the navigation of all of that is unique for each experience. I have been a caregiver for people who are loved ones, but not relatives. I've been a caregiver for my grandmother, my dad, and overlapping my dad by a couple of years has been my journey with Jack. And when I look at the journey with my dad, my hero, the person I looked up to the most in my life, that journey was incredible because his whole life, he taught me how to be safe and taught me how to think. And as his diagnosis continued to advance, he didn't have access to those things anymore. And it came to me, who he had been teaching for my whole life, to how to be safe and how to think through things. It became on me to be doing that. And it was during my journey with my dad when the concept of massive acceptance and radical presence that I now live my whole life through was revealed to me. And when the journey with my husband began, and that's a different relationship than the relationship with a father or anything else or anyone else. When that journey with Jack began, I was able to look from the beginning of our journey through massive acceptance and radical presence that this is our life and this is our journey. And every day, I maximize the potential and possibilities of every single moment of our journey by practicing massive acceptance and radical presence. An example of this is that now, because of the advancement of the diagnosis, there are days when I come in and he has very little access to communication. His eyes may stay closed. He doesn't speak. And yet I'll hold his hand, and I've greeted him the exact same way since he was first diagnosed. And when I greet him, I'll get a smile or he'll squeeze my hand. Through massive acceptance and radical presence, that fills my heart. It also allows me to completely observe him objectively for where he is in his diagnosis so that I'm able to meet him exactly where he's at in his diagnosis. I know that in my early journeys, it would have been harder for me to have had that objectivity because I didn't have the wisdom I have now.
So you were a little bit ahead of the learning curve when you and Jack began to deal with this diagnosis.
I was. I have, for the majority of our time together, been able to, it's almost like you become a disinterested third party observing what it is. I'm his wife, so I'm associated with everything that's going on. I'm in the journey with him. And yet I'm able to observe the journey and say, what is it that he really needs? For example, when the hurricane, I live in South Florida, we've had a couple hurricanes in the last 5 years.
Just a few.
Just a few. And one of them came right up our street, and another one, came a couple miles away. And they were very significant. And when I was planning for it, it was what is going to keep him safe. My two goals for my husband and for any of the other care receivers are that they're safe and happy. When the hurricane was coming, my planning was based on how do I position myself to be the most valuable asset for the people who will be able to be providing him care, to be able to be a support to him if they need to evacuate, and then to be able to provide any level of support he needs while he's in the care community so that he has the best experience through the hurricane and we can be the least amount of burden on all of the other people who are helping in the care community.
That's quite a challenge. We don't talk too much about emergency preparedness on the podcast, but man, I live in Southeast Texas, so we are the recipient of numerous hurricanes, and emergency prep and management for a caregiver is huge. Whether you are a family caregiver or a professional paid caregiver for a hospice agency, that kind of management is a huge, huge responsibility.
I talk a lot about planning for emergencies. Not everybody has a hurricane. Well, a lot of people have tornadoes.
Right.
There are going to be emergencies, whether your loved one is living at home. For example, when we're caregivers, one of the huge things about planning for emergencies that caregivers don't do is plan for their own emergency. I have, in the course that I'm putting out, I have a whole section of it for the caregiver to plan in case they're not available. What happens if they break their leg? What happens if they have a family emergency and they need to leave town? And it is thinking through all the different kinds of things. What happens if there's an emergency and the EMTs need to get in the house?
Right.
How do they get in the house? It's not like you can ring the doorbell. And all of these different things. It's very helpful for us in roles of caregiving support to make a list of different kinds of emergencies that could happen, create a team of people to support you, and also work with the emergency care team in the community so they know how to get into your home. They know where your file of life or other emergency information is for medications and things like that. If they need to be able to get your loved one out, they have information about what they're used to being called, things that they might be comforted by, all of that information. And you have emergency numbers for other people if you're not available.
Yeah, I think we forget in all the other caregiving. I mean, let's face it, that's a bucket that's swirling with a lot of stuff. All the caregiving responsibilities. It's sometimes really hard to think about those things because that's just an additional horrifying thought. What if I am incapacitated? Then what the heck happens? I think that's a big challenge for caregivers.
And yet it's so valuable because since as caregivers, many caregivers, here's a surprise, don't practice self-care. And by not practicing self-care, they're stepping closer and closer to them having their own medical emergency. And if that happens, what gets done about it?
Exactly. And there is a certain group of caregivers over a certain age that 30% of them pass away before their caree.
Yes,
yes,
they do.
So neglecting self-care, and I'm not talking about manicure, pedicure. I'm talking about going to the dentist, going to your physician, having your checkups, having your mammogram, having your prostate screening. That's self-care.
I literally know a caregiver who was scratching at a scab on the back of her calf And we said, you need to go get that checked. And she said, oh, it's fine. I just don't have time for that.
Right.
And it turned out that it was a melanoma and it killed her. She didn't go get it treated and she died.
Yeah. I think that kind of self-care, it's not sexy. It doesn't sound like any fun. It doesn't sound relaxing. It's not Calgon, take me away. It's the bare bones. Are you brushing your teeth every night? Do you put yourself to bed at a decent hour? Things like that. Do you have a friend to talk to?
I talk about having, for example, a self-care accountability partner. It can be so difficult for us to do the responsible kinds of self-care. This is the pot right here calling, like I'm one of those people. I only learned this from the School of Hard Knocks because I kept shaving off one more thing and one more thing. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I'll wait till after he goes to bed to do this. I can get dad to do this. I can shave off one more thing. And then you're actually in a depleted state and you don't recognize it yet. And I recognized that I needed to have an accountability partner for me because it was so easy for me. The very first thing that most of us as caregivers do is cut something out from our care. And then that becomes our natural way of thinking. It becomes our automatic way of thinking. We're not even conscious anymore about the fact that we're shaving off self-care because it's so automatic. We've just gotten used to doing it. An accountability partner in self-care helps raise that level of awareness that, yes, you need to be taking care of yourself. You need to get to the doctor.
To get a little personal, who's your self-care accountability partner these days?
I have a friend of mine who's my self-care accountability partner.
Do you get the tough love from her?
She will bust me. She loves it. And yet, I will say there have been times my natural way of being wired is caring for people. I love to do things for other people. I love people to step into potential and possibilities. And I'll see an opportunity for that and I'm all over it. And it's like, well, I'll just stay up an extra half an hour and get this done. I could do that. She just loves every opportunity to bust me on it. And because she knows me, she knows how to ask the question. And I have promised that I will absolutely be 100% honest and upfront with her.
Yeah, that's hard. That can be some tough love. I have an accountability partner for my self-care, and sometimes I don't really like the accountability that much.
We may not like it. We didn't perhaps like it when our moms made us eat broccoli, and yet there was a reason for it. I promise you, I know that having an accountability partner has kept me healthier and has now made my practicing self-care become a priority.
Right. I totally agree. I have a workout partner who holds me accountable for whether I'm at the gym when I say I'm going to be there. And sometimes I grumble. I'm like, I don't even like this person. But absolutely, to have that outsider's perspective to say, you've started to slack on this. I see this in you. I see you're short-tempered. I see that you're tired. You've had 3 respiratory infections in the last 6 months. Somebody to look at that from an outsider's point of view and say, this is what I see, and you need to be aware of it. I think it's really easy for caregivers to, like you're saying, shave off that one extra piece. Oh, I could let this drop. I can let this slide. Because most caregivers, when confronted with challenges of time or energy, they're not going to say, well, the incontinence is such a big job. I'm just going to change him maybe 4 times a day instead of 7. They're not going to do that. They're not going to shave off the kind of responsibilities for their caree. It's always going to be something that they give up for themselves.
I was giving a talk one time and I asked by a show of hands as it related to self-care. How many of you keep a list of everything you shave off in the area of self-care? Every time you shave something off, do you write it down? Do you keep track of what you are shaving off in order to care for someone else? And I asked the question not from a perspective of being selfish. Self-care is not selfish. It's self-love. If you were writing a list of that and you were to show that to someone else, they would say, oh, seriously? Like, you got to take care of yourself. The accountability partner is someone who loves you so much, they want to protect you from yourself when you don't know how to protect yourself because you're giving so much of yourself. You're doing what you want to do as the right thing for the right reasons. However, one of the other great parts about that is that they can help us recognize we've bumped up against something where now it's time for us to get creative and find support and find help. And this is where, when we think, well, I don't know how to research it, I don't know how to find it, or I don't want to pay for it, I'll just do it on my own. When we bump up against the fact that this is really impacting our health, which if we can't be the caregiver, then our care receiver is going to have a harder time. So part of the practicing of self-love is being selfish to be able to continue to be the caregiver and be able to have your health. When you bump up against something like that, where you're not really sure what to do, or you're having to shave off that one more thing, that's when getting involved with the support community, asking other people, getting other people involved can really be a help. There are so many solutions that don't require any financial investment, and they can really be a huge help. The other thing is people have come up with crazy ideas that are so time efficient. Things that, in my finite mind, I didn't think of. And I mean, I've thought of some really great things that help caregivers. And I've heard some things from other people who are caregivers that had never occurred to me. And it's wonderful to learn from them. When we give people the opportunity to lean in and support us and get the benefit of these other ideas, it can be tremendously valuable for us.
Absolutely. Caregiving hacks. Learn from somebody else's successes.
That would be a great podcast, Caregiving Hacks.
I like that one. I like that a lot. We might have to talk later about that one. So let's talk about big picture. Big picture.
Sure.
What do you think the biggest issues caregivers have to deal with today would be?
Three things. The first one that I would say is navigating the roles of caregiving support in harmony with the other roles of our lives. Our caregiving journey is not the same day in and day out. There are days when it is very demanding. There are days when it's more routine. There are times when the diagnosis progresses, and there are things that have to get stepped up. We all have very busy lives, and we're trying to figure out how to insert caregiving as a role in it. It's a very challenging thing to do at times. It's another opportunity where reaching out to people is very helpful. I created an exercise that helps people learn how to have alignment in the areas of our lives. I think that navigating all of those roles throughout our caregiving journey and with the rest of our lives can be very challenging. Another one is the financial cost. We don't know going in, if you're going to buy a house, you know how much the house is going to cost. You figure out what your budget's going to be. You find out the finance rate, and then your utilities are kind of an unknown, but you have an idea. You have an idea about property taxes. You got to have a pretty good idea about it. With caregiving, we have no idea. We just have no idea what it's going to cost or how long the journey is going to last. My husband is defying the odds. He is medically under hospice care because if you looked at his medical condition, you would think that he was closer to end of life. And yet, the Energizer Bunny, he takes a licking and keeps on ticking. We don't have any idea what the long-term cost is going to be. That's one of the things that's very challenging for people. And while there are alternatives and there are support mechanisms, many people don't know about them. They don't know how to put the information together for them, like some of the government programs. And they don't know how to compare the different options that they have. So that's another one. And then the third one is access to the correct support resources. It's unfortunate. It's not unusual, but it's unfortunate. There's no apples to apples comparison for so many kinds of support. And you're trying to figure out what's the best kind of support to get for my loved one to complement what I'm doing. And you do the research and you have this huge graph trying to figure out which option or options make sense. I would say those are three. The list could go on and on and on.
Sure. As a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
if you could have a do-over in the experiences that you've had,
Yes.
what would you do differently?
Thank you for that question. It's such a wonderfully powerful, introspective question. And for the audience to know, I was given this question ahead of time, and I'm glad I was, because I really reflected on it. And my answer is I wouldn't do anything differently. The reason is each one of my experiences, challenging or positive, has guided me to where I am today. I know that my heart has always been in doing the right thing for the right reasons. The outcome was not always what I anticipated. There were times that were tremendously challenging, and I'm sure there still will be. And yet in each one, I learned something. I learned something about myself so many times. I love who I am becoming more and more each day, and I'm stepping into my mission and my purpose and being so aligned with that and being comfortable in who I am. And these journeys have brought me there. I'm glad that I have had opportunities, since this journey keeps being presented to me over and over again, to have learned so much, and that now I can be sharing that with others so their journey is easier than mine is. And also that I have peace of mind and reflection, knowing that I really have done my very best. And I can look at each journey that I had and feel that I did help my care receivers live their best life until this life was over.
Wow. I don't know that every caregiver could say that, but what an amazing experience or set of experiences you've had that have powered your purpose and that you recognize it.
I do recognize I am so passionate in my life at wanting other caregivers to have an easier journey than I had. And I have no resentment about the journey that I've had. I have no frustration that this has been my journey. I accept it. There's a purpose for it. I'm living from it. And yet I wouldn't have had these experiences if they weren't meant for me, for my life, to help others.
Yeah.
There's a purpose in them.
Yeah. You created meaning. Nothing better than that.
Created meaning.
So, Sue, how can my listeners connect with you and utilize your upcoming course and the resources? You've got an amazing TEDx talk. How can my listeners connect with you?
My website, SueRyan.Solutions, has an overview of the offerings that I have. There's a page for the TED Talk. What a fun, amazing journey that was. I loved it. It took years for me to have the talk I was meant to give be revealed to me. And it was just such a passionate journey. I'll tell very quickly that I had an opportunity come to me where somebody said, "Are you interested in giving a TED Talk?" And I said, "Well, I've been interested for a long time. I just didn't have the talk." And they said, "Well, if you want to apply, they're considering doing one in December and they may accept yours." It was accepted, and I had 2 months to prepare my TED Talk.
Oh, wow.
And it was wonderful. And it is about massive acceptance and being at choice. That information's on the website. The passion of my life right now, the online course that I've created from the program I created called The Caregiver's Journey. The course is going to launch in May, and The Caregiver's Journey is something I created that walks people through their entire caregiving journey, from when they either see it on the horizon or it begins immediately with a diagnosis, all the way through moving forward after their caregiving journey has ended, because we are meant to thrive in our lives. And many people, when they end their caregiving journey, are not sure what to do next or how to do it or how to feel. And I help walk through that. I've done it before. I've been in that space, and I know I will be again. And that's The Caregiver's Journey. There's information you can sign up to be notified when the course is available this May.
Perfect.
I'm also a speaker and a coach. And if anybody would be interested in having me speak at their events or coach individually or in their businesses, I'd love that too.
Well, I will put a link to your website and to your course and to your TEDx talk. They'll be in the show notes so my listeners can find it. Sue, thank you so much for talking with me today. You were a gift.
Helen, you're a gift in my life and the lives of many others, and I thank you so very much. Blessings.
When you think back about when Sue started her first caregiving experience, it didn't occur to me. She didn't have the internet. She couldn't Google anything, which we don't always recommend doing. But there are times when you're looking for support, you're looking for guidance and tips and caregiving hacks. The internet is a great place. But she was a caregiver before all of that was available. She even talked about there was nothing in the yellow pages. I don't think I even have a yellow pages anymore. But you couldn't access information for help and guidance. So I think the experience of caregiving was even more isolated than it is now. And she said there were also financial and legal aspects of caregiving that can be frustrating for caregivers. Her best advice, Sue says, ask questions. There's help out there, but ask questions. She also talked about emergency preparedness, which is something we haven't talked about on the podcast before with a caregiver, a family caregiver. Emergency preparedness is part of every hospice agency. They're required by regulation to do that. Be ready for any emergencies, hurricanes, tornadoes, biological events, terrorism, any sort of thing like that. But caregivers don't often think that far ahead. They're so busy managing the day-to-day basics, right? But it's super important for them to consider what an emergency would be and how to handle it if they had an emergency where they are unable to be the caregiver, which is an interesting and probably very frightening situation to have to consider for a lot of caregivers, that their care recipient would not have a primary caregiver, the person who knows about them, knows all their little quirks and their needs, their medical history, more than anybody else. So emergency preparedness. She also reiterated a point that we kick this every single time we have a podcast. Everybody knows it, and we're still lousy at doing it. Self-care is crucial for a caregiver, including having a self-care accountability partner, which isn't always pleasant. That accountability comes back to bite you. Oh, sometimes I hate it. I'll have a friend that says, "Do you want some perspective?" And I immediately say, "No, I don't. I don't want to embrace the realism." But an accountability partner is so valuable when it comes to your self-care. She identified the biggest issues, self-care, financial unknowns, a lot of great information to unpack in her caregiving journey. So I would recommend that you go to Sue's website, SueRyan.Solutions. She's got her services there. She tells her caregiving journey there. She's got some free guides for you as well as her blog. You can watch her TEDx talk on her website as well, access all her resources, and you can also access Sue's course, the Caregiver's Journey online course. It's going to be available May of 2023, but you can go into her website and find it there. So visit SueRyan.Solutions. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram and send your questions or comments to me at helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.